as we look at the projections for a large and continuously growing global space economy, I think it's important to recognize that a lot of that economic growth is probably going to be taking place at spaceports. And why is that? Because spaceports are not just about having a place where you can launch rockets from. My name is Dr. George Nield. I'm currently serving as the chairman of the Global Spaceport Alliance, so I really appreciate the chance to talk with you today.
Thank you so much for joining me again, and it's good seeing you. And we're talking today about the event happening in Florida later this month. The Global Spaceport Alliance is having its annual summit. So if you wouldn't mind giving me a sense of what I have to look forward to.
Yes, so this is actually part of what is referred to as Commercial Space Week now, which starts on Monday, January the 27th with the GSA Spaceport Summit. And then the next day is Space Mobility, which is focused on the United States Space Force and its needs for military space activities. And then the next 2 days are SpaceCom, which is more generally focused on civil and commercial space activities. So the first day, and that's the GSA Spaceport Summit, and that's a chance for the spaceport community to get together in person and share progress and ambitions and challenges and lessons learned. We've got a number of excellent speakers and several panel sessions that I think will be very much of interest both to the spaceport community and to the broader audience as well.
Can you give me a sense of what themes are going to be really prevalent this year? I mean, spaceports have been very busy. They've been a huge topic of conversation for many years, but especially the past few years when we're talking about capacity and the incredible growth of commercial space especially. I imagine those might come up, but I imagine there's also many more themes that are going to be discussed.
So all of those and more. But the primary theme this year in particular is about how one can think about and work towards building an economic powerhouse, if you will, at or around your spaceport. We know that space is really important. There's so much happening right now in space, whether it's launching astronauts or satellites or scientific instruments and so forth. But at least today, everything that happens in space starts at a spaceport. And so it's important to focus on what's going on, where are they located, where is their new activity, and again, some of the challenges and opportunities and ideas that people have come up with to make the whole mission very successful.
Yeah, I imagine the paradigm a lot of people have about what spaceports can offer and what they can look like and the kinds of jobs they can create has shifted quite a bit in recent years.
I agree with that. I think in the past, there has been this feeling that a spaceport was primarily about launching rockets into space, and that makes a lot of sense, certainly. But it is much more than that. And as we look at the projections for a large and continuously growing global space economy, I think it's important to recognize that a lot of that economic growth is probably going to be taking place at spaceports. And why is that? Because spaceports are not just about having a place where you can launch rockets from. Instead, we can envision aerospace manufacturing, testing, technology development, and research, workforce development, and in the not too distant future, things like point-to-point transportation through space. And all of those can have huge benefits for spaceports.
It's fantastic. I always say it. I really look forward to that day. I really I think a lot of us are just hotly anticipating when that day will come. So this is the 10th summit that's going to be happening. I can't help but ask on your reflections of 10 years of this summit occurring, what changes you have seen. 10 years is both not a lot of time and a lot of time, depending on one's point of view. I'm just curious your reflections on that time.
We've seen a tremendous amount of growth and understanding about the importance of spaceports and what they are and where they are located. So many people are familiar with Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center, maybe Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, and locations that are operated by other countries. But there are a number of spaceports now that are in operation or are being planned for and developed all over the world. And in terms of the Global Spaceport Alliance in particular, just from last year till now, we've seen a growth of more than 20% in the member organizations. And so I think there's an increasing recognition of the role that spaceports can play and the benefits that can result from interacting one with another instead of trying to do it all on your own.
Certainly. And global being in the name of the organization, I feel here at T-Minus, we're reporting almost every other week about news of a new spaceport somewhere in the world, something in their paradigm that is just a little different, and someone's trying something a little new. And it's really interesting to hear how everyone's adapting to their own environment and the needs of their local or national market. It's really quite fascinating. And I think people who aren't paying close attention to what spaceports are doing are missing out on something really neat. I'm curious for maybe our global, our international partners outside of the United States. What are you hearing? What are you seeing from them maybe as a trend in the past few years in terms of the growth that's happening abroad?
That's another interesting thing to talk about. Just as in the United States, we're seeing this recognition that space is not just for governments anymore. And so it's a transition really from governments and government space agencies doing everything that happens in space to opening that up. And we're seeing communities, states, regions, countries who want to be involved with space in some way, but they're not sure how to do it. They don't have billions of dollars to be able to replicate the Kennedy Space Center in other places. And that's okay, because what we're seeing now is things like reusable launch vehicles, much smaller spacecraft, and therefore smaller launch vehicles, and the recognition that not all spaceports are alike. You can focus on one aspect, and whether that is sounding rockets or space tourism or launching satellites, scientific research, other kinds of things, it doesn't have to be everything in one location. So we're seeing vertical launch sites with the launch pad and the gantries and so forth, but also horizontal launch sites, which basically can be an airport with a runway and hangars and other facilities. And those are becoming feasible as locations for space activities.
It's a fascinating space to watch, honestly. I'm going to be asking this of pretty much everyone I know because this is going to be my first time going to Space Week. So I'm quite excited. I'm very curious what you are most looking forward to during what I'm sure is an incredibly busy time. Meeting lots of people, having lots of catch-ups and conversations. Any tips, what you're looking forward to, anything, any advice, that kind of a thing?
I think many of us in aerospace especially have recognized after COVID the value of face-to-face interaction. And so it's one thing to read about something in a journal or a magazine, or even have a video call or briefing on something. And it's quite another to actually meet face-to-face and get great feedback and ask private questions and to see the enthusiasm among all these different people, many of which you might not have known before or even recognize that they were involved in the same field that we are.
That's something I'm also looking forward to as well, seeing a lot of those faces that I've maybe only heard or seen on video calls, then seeing them in person for the first time in a while, if not ever, getting that enthusiasm and really taking it all in. Dr. George Nield, as always, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I want to make sure if there's anything you wanted to leave our audience with about the upcoming event or anything like that, that I give you the last word. Any parting thoughts?
Well, thank you. Just a few things to mention. We do have some excellent speakers, including Kelvin Coleman, who is the Associate Administrator of the FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation, who will be giving one of the presentations there. We'll have reports from many of our advisory groups that are working on a variety of different subjects. And we're talking about two new initiatives, one with the Hague Institute for Global Justice that has to do with signing the Washington Compact, which some folks may have heard about, somewhat similar to the Artemis Accords in some ways, but not for governments or others. And then a new initiative with the International Space University. And those will both be discussed at the gathering. So those are a couple of teasers, and it should be a really great gathering. I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you so much for your time. As always, it's great speaking with you. Good seeing you, and see you in Florida very soon.
Thank you, Marie.